So we just had the longest keynote that Final Fantasy XIV has ever had, and there was a lot of information to go through. So I'm going to give you the rundown on all the major details that you need to know about the coming expansion, Evercold. The keynote started off with the trailer. I'm not going to talk too much about the trailer, but there were two big takeaways. The first of which was the name, Evercold, and the second of which was that it's going to release in January of next year, which is way sooner than I think anybody expected. We were all thinking it was going to be like April, maybe June of next year, so a January release date is very welcome. It does make me wonder when they're actually going to fit the media tour in this time, since it usually happens between the final Fan Fest and the release of the expansion, but that would put it in the middle of December this time, so maybe we're not going to get a media tour, who knows. Either way, I'm very happy that we're getting the expansion as early on as we are, because I didn't want to have to wait for another year. I'm impatient, I want things yesterday. They're calling this saga that's going to begin with Evercold, the Godless Realms saga. It seems like Dawn Trail happened and we're just kind of moving on from that, which is probably for the best, to be honest. So there's a lot of major changes coming in Endcold. In Endcold? Evercold. So I'm going to run through them and try to make them as easy to understand as possible. The first thing we're going to talk about are the game design updates. They go on to talk about how, we're all very fatigued with the Tombstone system. It hasn't changed in 13 years, and it seems like in the coming expansion, the Tombstone system's just getting thrown in the bin, which I think is about time. It's archaic. We need something new. We need something fresh. They show off the new adventure activity screen, which seems to be the new place to collect your rewards and upgrade your gear. They also show off the new mission system, which changes its focus from daily rewards from the duty roulette into weekly missions that will give you points that you can use to get your gear. One of the big reasons for this is so that people can allocate their time better doing content that they want to do instead of being forced into just combat. And it also means that there's going to be more options for people who want to do different things in order to get their gear. You might have also noticed on the adventure activity screen that there's a thing saying seasons. Now, that caused a lot of people to kind of go, whoa, when they first saw it. But Yoshi P assured us it doesn't mean that 14 is going to become some free-to-play shovelware that's going to force microtransactions. There's not going to be a season pass, nothing like that.
Season? Like free-to-play, season pass, extra fees? No.
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 Essentially, a season is just going to comprise of the even number patch and the odd number patch that follows it. So 7.0 and 7.1 would be a season, 7.2 and 3 would be seasons, and 7.4 and 7.5 would also be a season. It doesn't actually make any changes to how it works, the patch cycle. It's really just there to make it easier to understand, which I get. If you're used to playing other games that use a season system, then it's going to make the patch cycle just easier to understand for new people. There are also a lot of character-focused updates coming. They talk about your character being fully pausable in the adventure activity screen. I don't know if that means there'll be preset pauses or if you'll actually be able to fully customize the pause, because let's face it, the Final Fantasy XIV fanbase are just absolute degenerates. We know what happened with the adventurer plates. I don't think they'll make that mistake again. They bring up the armory updates, the major one being that you're going to be able to reflect your highest item level onto other jobs. I don't know how this is going to work for gearing and like getting alternative things and materia. They didn't give us a lot of detail, but that's something that we're going to be able to do, which a lot of people seemed excited for. They go on to say that character action skins are going to become a thing, but they don't really give us any details. We're going to have to wait until Berlin before they actually give us, anything to work with there. But it's definitely exciting. I think it'll be a good way to, express some individuality in our characters. Character creation updates are coming as well. One of the major changes is that they're adding a color picker system for things like hair, skin, and eye colors, rather than the current presets, which is going to open up a lot more options. There will be some images on the screen while I'm talking about this that'll show there's going to be more skin color options, more hair color options. Honestly, I think this is an overdue change. The presets were kind of, again, archaic, and it is nice to see that Final Fantasy XIV is actually taking functionality steps to feel like a modern game rather than the 13-year-old game that it actually is. They briefly touch on improvements to things like lip and eye options, with the addition of eyeshadow being something that they're implementing. They mentioned that we're going to be able to toggle parts of the gear on and off. They show this off on a suit of armor, where, as you can see, you can turn off the pauldrons, the belts, the tassets, things like that. They also show some glamour items where you can get rid of scarves or various additional flourishes to the outfit that you might not want there. Moving on to other types of content, they discuss public field content and how they're looking to add more stuff to the public zones to make them feel a bit more alive. They're going to add more dynamic content, so it's not just, the same handful of fates on repeat every 10 to 20 minutes sort of thing. They're also looking to improve the questing experience. He said one of the things that they've really dug their heels in about is not giving players system-side guidance, but that's something that they're looking to change moving forward. They're going to implement quality of life updates, but again, we're going to have to wait until we get to Berlin for any details on that. Moving on to battle content specifically, they discussed how about 80% of players clear the normal raids, but only about 20% clear Savage. They're looking to add a new middle difficulty to bridge that gap, but they don't really have more details on that, and we won't find out anything more until Tokyo. But this third difficulty seems to be like a mid-core experience that's not going to be as in-depth as Savage, but it's going to be a bit more challenging than the regular mode. They talk about changes to Alliance raid progression. They're not looking to shorten the length of the raids themselves, but they do discuss the fact that the Alliance raids can be a very big time sink, and they want to alleviate that time sink somehow, but again, we won't have any details beyond that until Tokyo. They do talk about new types of battle content, but they didn't really elaborate on that, so what that means is really anyone's guess. We'll likely find out more details later, but for now, it's good to know that they are at least planning to do something new. One of the biggest announcements that was made was regional matchmaking. Basically, they're finally linking up all of the data centers within a specific region so that if you queue into a duty on any of those worlds, you can be matched up with players from all across the region, not just limited to your data center. These changes are also going to include the party finder, so party finder will now be region-wide instead of just your specific data center. These updates are actually coming before the expansion in the 7.5 series of updates. They're going to begin their stress tests with Japan because they're based in Japan. It's just easier. And if that goes according to plan and everything seems to be working, they'll then expand those updates to North America, Europe, and finally China. The end goal is basically they want their system to be fully up and running and functional, and, there's not going to be a risk of it breaking before the expansion comes out. So this should alleviate any need to travel to different data centers to do content. If that's something that's affected you personally, like it has myself, that's a very welcome change. Though it's overdue, I'm glad that they're not making us wait until the expansion to actually implement it. I'm very briefly just going to touch on the new jobs. They don't really talk about it much, but they do say we're getting new jobs. We knew this was going to happen. We pretty much figured that it was going to be a tank in a physical ranged. They did confirm this. The first job will be officially announced in Berlin, but they did give us a hint with Yoshi P's t-shirt, as is tradition. It's the guy from the hardest fight in the game. There's speculation that it's going to be some kind of Magitech warrior or a physical ranged. It's going to use the big shield cannon things. Personally, I'm hoping that it's the tank. I think the dual shield thing could be quite interesting. Now, beyond the new jobs themselves, we are getting a new job system, and this is one of the biggest changes that they're implementing in the next expansion. If you've ever played something like World of Warcraft, you're probably familiar with class specializations. These are basically different ways to play the same job so that you're not just stuck with one particular playstyle. They're doing something similar in Final Fantasy. Now, it's not going to be like World of Warcraft where you can play a paladin as a tank or as a healer. The jobs are still locked into their respective roles. However, the two new modes are going to separate the more homogenized rotations that we currently have from the new rotations, which are going to be more focused on individuality. This isn't available for limited jobs, but I don't think anybody was expecting that it would be. All 21 currently existing jobs in the game will get the Reborn mode, which is going to be similar to what they currently are, and a new Evolved mode, which is going to be something completely fresh. The new jobs, however, moving forward, are only going to get this new Evolved form, which it's not the end of the world, and thankfully there's going to be no requirements to unlock it. You'll just be able to pick either mode once you unlock a job that has access to these two modes. They've also stressed that they're not leaving the Reborn modes behind. They're still going to get their updates every expansion with the increase in level cap, as they always have, but this Evolved mode is just going to be something different that you can pick and choose between, which honestly is pretty exciting. I've been saying for a while that they should add class specializations to the game, and that felt like cope for a very long time. So when they actually revealed this during the keynote, I damn near lost my mind. It's really exciting. I suppose if you look at it, it kind of means that we're going from having 21 jobs to having like 44 jobs in the space of a single expansion, which is insane. They do seem to be focusing on balancing them quite well. They have stressed that all modes of all jobs will be able to clear any content, but the evolved modes will have a slightly higher damage output just because of the nature of how they work. It's said that the evolved modes will be more streamlined. They'll have less individual buttons, but it seems like you're going to be pressing those buttons more frequently. They did show this off briefly during the developer panel. I'll put some footage on the screen while I'm talking about this. But it doesn't seem like it's just going to be an easy mode of the jobs, which is good because I don't think anybody wants an easier version of the jobs. They're pretty easy to begin with. They mentioned that there will be some overlapping skills, but there'll also be unique ones, which I think will be exciting. The end goal with this is to have the reborn modes, which are named after a realm reborn, to feel familiar, and the evolved ones are going to have an emphasis on individuality, and they're just going to be something different, which I think 14 has desperately been in need in. And I think this is a pretty cool way to keep the familiar stuff and give us something new. It pleases both groups of people, as far as I can tell, so I think it's a good idea. And I'm really glad they've decided to do this. They did also briefly mention that the level cap's going to go from level 100 to level 110. This doesn't seem like a big surprise, but they did mention that they were thinking of doing something different. Ultimately, they decided not to. I'm assuming this is because there's already a lot of changes coming in this expansion. They didn't really want to go overboard. They do also very briefly touch on things that we knew were going to happen. New dungeons, new gear, new enemies, duty finder updates, things like that. I'm not going to talk too much about it because we did know, but a big announcement that they made was the new Alliance Raid series. But honestly, I can't even do the announcement justice, so I'm just going to show you. That's right, the new Alliance Raid is an Evangelion collaboration. As you can imagine, the crowd went absolutely insane when this was announced. I personally haven't seen Evangelion, but I know that it has something of a cult following, and I'm really excited to see how they're going to implement it with the new raid series. It's going to be good. I'm probably going to have to watch it before the raids come out because, I mean, duh. Now, the last things that they really talked about were the system requirements. They do stress that there are no changes for PC players. PS5 support and Xbox support will continue. PS4 support will continue at the launch of Evercold, but around the point of about 8.3, it seems like they're no longer going to physically be able to fit Final Fantasy XIV onto PS4 hard drives. So it seems like that will be the end of PlayStation 4 support. Obviously, that's not going to be for a while yet, so players do have plenty of time to save up for a PS5. Or alternatively, they also announced that the Switch version of the game is going to be launching in August. There'll be a 1-month early access period where you'll be able to play for free. After that, you will of course need a subscription. The thing to note is that you won't be able to use your regular subscription. I'm assuming this is because of Nintendo, because Nintendo loves money. You're actually going to have to pay for a separate Switch subscription, but on the plus side, as a concession, you don't need an NSO subscription to play, and if you do have an active subscription already, the Switch subscription will be given at a 50% discount, which, I mean, fair enough. That's decent, I think. The two final big announcements were that the two final big announcements that they finally revealed the new coming Ultimate for 7.51, which is Dancing Mad and has a heavy focus on Kefka. I'm assuming it'll have focus on sort of the other non-Omega stuff from the Omega raids, you know, X-Death and things like that, the Phantom Train maybe. They don't show off a lot, but they do say, oh, it looks a lot like Savage, but obviously and last but by no means least, the already generous free trial is going to be expanded even further to include Shadowbringers, so people can have their hearts ripped out and stomped on absolutely free. Honestly, I think it's kind of crazy that they give away so much. It's got to be one of the most generous free trials of any game out there, so if anybody you know is interested in getting Final Fantasy XIV, there's now a massive incentive with Shadowbringers being available completely free. But yeah, that about wraps up all of the major announcements from FanFest. They do briefly touch on other things like new zones and things like that, but we already knew we were going to get new zones, so I'm not really going to cover that. Thank you very much for watching. If you like this type of content, be sure to subscribe because I'm going to be making more moving forward. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like and tell me in the comments what you're most excited for in Evercold. For me personally, it's got to be the job system. I have been dying for something new for the jobs for a very long time, and I think this is really going to give me what I want while also maintaining the things that I do currently like. I'm a big job hopper, so the ability to job hop within the same job is going to be pretty cool for me. But yeah, other than that, I will see you in the next one. Take it easy.